Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and today we're going to do a deep dive into adrenal dysfunction, if you want to call it adrenal fatigue. Either way, we're going to do a deep dive into it, and I think this is one of the ones that all of us should be paying close attention to. In fact, this is where I started my journey with functional medicine and functional nutrition, and the reason being is I had what I didn't know at the time, something called adrenal fatigue, adrenal dysfunction. It took me a long time to figure out what that even meant, and even a longer time to figure out how to fix it. Today, I'm going to bring it to you in a very short, sweet, compact form. And I'll say this, most likely all of us in today's environment are really pushing the envelope when it comes to our capacity right before we break down. So I'll dive into what are the symptoms, what are the causes, how do we test for it, what are some of the amazing vitamins and herbs that we can utilize to get better from this. So keep doing your thing, keep sharing out, keep spreading love. Appreciate the fact that you guys are here, and know this is the way that the algorithms work. The more that you comment, the more that you like, the more that you literally share these things out, more people get to hear it. And especially in an episode like this, I think everyone needs to hear a little bit of this. This is something that literally changed my life. And I'll also say that if you've ever been absolutely exhausted in your life and then you get your energy back, however you get your energy back, however you find you again, you become very, very grateful. So I'm very grateful that I understand the role of my adrenal glands and how to help them, how to continuously support them. So I, quite frankly, have the ability, at least the opportunity, to go out there and try to be the best version of Bart that I possibly can. All right, so let's dive in here. So here's the question. Are you ever tired and wonder, why am I so damn tired? Yes, we need sleep, and that's a big component of it. I talk about that all the time. But there are times that you feel more tired than you probably think that you should. And for a lot of people, they're walking around absolutely like zombies. So I'm going to walk you through what's called the 3 phases of adrenal dysfunction or adrenal fatigue. And then we'll dive into some of the symptoms, and we'll dive into really some of the causes, and then how we wrap all this up with testing and what do we do about it? Because that's the bottom line. We've got to do something about it. All right. So there's really 3 phases, and they're kind of the symptoms that you're going to go through. Some of the symptoms, by the way, fatigue, being tired, no doubt. And I'm not just talking about I'm tired because I didn't sleep well last night. I'm talking about you just wake up and you're tired again. And day in and day out, you just don't seem to be able to recover no matter what you do. Here's some other key symptoms. If you ever experience it, you bend over. Maybe you're in your yoga practice. You're doing a downward dog, or you just get out of bed and you come up quickly. You bend over, you come up quickly, get out of bed quickly, and all of a sudden you get this lightheadedness, a little bit of a dizziness. If you experience that, that is your adrenal glands not responding quick enough. They're literally what balances us out when it comes to blood pressure and making sure that our body has oxygen and our brain has oxygen. So when we bend over, essentially we're anti-gravity, and it's easier. The moment we stand up, it's technically a little bit of stress for our cardiovascular system. So our adrenal glands should kick in right away and regulate that. It uses cortisol and adrenaline and things like that. But if they are tired, all of a sudden they will pause just ever so slightly, a second, 10 seconds. You get a little of that lightheadedness, and that comes from a lack of oxygen. And then we get on with our daily day. So that's a symptom that often people have. There's some other symptoms here clinically that we see. If you start to find yourself just bruising easy, and the reason behind that is real simple. Your adrenal glands essentially hold about 50% of the body's vitamin C storage. And when you become too stressed, when you have too much going on, physically, mentally, chemically, you can dump all of that vitamin C into the body. And now you don't have vitamin C. Now follow me here. If you don't have enough of the true vitamin C complex, and I'm not just talking about ascorbic acid, if you don't have the full vitamin C complex, now you can't heal. That is one of the first things that your body uses to heal connective tissue. So for example, if you go to the gym and you find yourself, the more you go to the gym, the more you work out, the more sore you become, the more tired you become, most likely your adrenal glands are tired and they're deficient and they're not able to keep with the demands of life. Some other subtleties. Your immune system starts to get weak. You find yourself getting sick more often. You're the one after a long weekend or long travel. You're the one getting sick. You're the one that's always breaking down. If you have these things, don't overlook the potential that at the root cause of this, it could be your adrenals. Now, when I say adrenals, literally there's 2 little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. When we have adrenal dysfunction and adrenal issues, adrenal fatigue, often is actually secondary, meaning that there's some other underlying root cause. More often than not, has something to do with your gut health. It could be your immune health. It could be the stressors that you're going through. But well, anyway, we shake it down. It is a version of stress. Navigating and figuring that one out is important so we can get you back to be the best version of yourself. But even though the adrenal glands are secondary, in order to get back to being healthy and heal up your gut, heal up your autoimmune condition, you're going to have to address your adrenals first, because you're going to need the energy. You're going to need the mental clarity. So things like brain fog, the unwillingness to take on tasks, the unwillingness to literally do things like read instructions because you can't handle it because your system is now tired. Some other things, you're less motivated. You find yourself that you have maybe even a little bit of poor outlook in life. Things look a little bit overwhelming to you, and at this point, some negativity starts to come in. I call it the stinking thinking starts to show up a little bit more often than it typically would for you. Maybe you're typically a relatively positive person, and yet now you're starting to look at things from a little different lens. And often that happens when flat out you're just tired and you don't have the mojo to get her done. So three phases here, and depending on where you are in that phase, it almost determines how important it is or what type of protocol that you're going to use to get yourself out of it. So in the first phase, just recognize this. If you find yourself just unable to settle, you're done work, you come home and you can't put your phone down. This is an initial sign that your adrenal glands are getting out of balance. Often it means that you're stuck in sympathetic dominance. When you're stuck in sympathetic dominance, that's a type of part of your nervous system. If that happens, you're essentially in fight or flight, and you're going to start to utilize and use a lot of your stress hormones, specifically something called cortisol. During this time, if this phase lasts a fair amount of time, this is also where people will gain weight, especially around the midsection. And the reason for that is, as you have more of this stress hormone called cortisol being produced in your body, it tells your liver to release sugar, even though you're not eating any. It is as if you're eating sugar every day. So your body's producing more sugar. So cortisol essentially acts as a fat storing hormone. That's unfortunately the downside of being under stress on a regular basis. So phase one, you become unsettled and you just can't unwind. It's hard for you to settle down. You can't sit still. You're definitely not capable of taking a nap. It's almost like you're stuck in like FOMO, fear of missing out. Phase two is, and this is where it gets a little bit more obvious. You end up in what we call wired and tired. You're tired, but as the day goes, you're getting a little drowsy, the evening's coming, and then boom, you get a second wind. That right there, folks, is red flag. If that is you, that is not because you produce better at night or anything like that. That means you are out of balance with your circadian rhythm, and you are out of balance with how the cortisol is being dumped into or emptied into your body, into your bloodstream. So cortisol should follow the sun. It should be high in the morning. As the day goes, it should get lower and lower and lower. And then as the evening comes, it gets dark. Cortisol should almost be nothing, and then it should restore itself. Unfortunately, because of our lifestyles, we are tricking our bodies, our minds, our eyes to believe that it is sunny at night. We pick up our phone, we look at them, and it stimulates us, pushing us right back into that fight or flight mode, that sympathetic dominance. Our body shuts off the melatonin production. It bumps up the cortisol, and now you are wide awake. And you're sitting there tossing and turning in your bed, and you figure, what the heck? I'm up anyways. I might as well pick up my phone. I might as well turn on the TV. I might as well get some work done. And sometimes you can be effective doing those things. Yet, in the big picture, very slippery slope. We know where this ends, and it ends up in a full-blown phase three. And phase three is you're exhausted. This is you can sleep 8-9 hours at night, and you wake up in the morning, and you are still tired. If that is you, it's time to raise your hand and go get yourself some help. What do I mean by that? So what I mean is that reach out to someone like myself, reach out to someone who does functional medicine, functional nutrition, and let them walk you through how to get healthy again. Even if you are a go-getter and you are a do-it-yourselfer, in this situation, the likelihood that you're going to have the wherewithal to follow through with strategies, to follow through with the type of disciplines. It's not going to be, I don't expect people to have great disciplines during adrenal dysfunction phases. So I keep it very limited or easy when it comes to nutrition. And really, I utilize the very specific vitamins, minerals, and herbs. And I'm going to talk about those in just a moment to get them out of this ditch. But this is very important to do so because the longer you stay in this ditch, yes, other things are going to happen. Now you are vulnerable for things like autoimmune conditions. Now you're vulnerable for blood pressure changes. You're going to have metabolic changes in your body. And this is a challenging situation between phase 2 and 3. And the longer this goes on, let's just say that you're trying to keep your body lean and you don't like gaining weight and whatnot. The likelihood that you're going to gain weight around your hips is very likely. And it's not the fun weight either. This is when your body starts to chew up and utilize your muscle tissue and you're going to basically become skinny fat. And in these moments, unfortunately, for a lot of people, they try to go work it out harder, and this can be detrimental. And this is, again, where I'd say if you feel like you're in any one of these phases, reach out, find a little bit of support, how to get through these things, because on the other side of this, you'll feel like an absolute beast. And you'll walk around going, this is what people feel like when they're not in adrenal dysfunction or adrenal fatigue. And I say that kind of jokingly because I used to wonder how people got through life feeling the way I did. I figured everyone felt the way I did, but I didn't understand how they were still so jovial and had so much energy and were able to say, yes, hey, you want to go to lunch? Sure. For me, it was always, hell no, I got to go home and sleep. I was exhausted. And this about 12, 13 years ago is what started my journey into functional medicine. I literally went into the doctor's office, said, doctor, something wrong with me. And if that's you right now, and you said, I've showed up in many clinics, many doctors, they don't know what's wrong with me. They don't know why I'm so tired. Because this isn't, and I'll talk about the testing in just a moment. This isn't a lab test. This is a functional medicine test. Well, I'll talk about it now. There's a very specific test you do. It's an at-home, which is nice. It's a saliva test. And that's how we want to accurately, essentially diagnose what's taking place with your adrenal glands. By having that test, it becomes crystal clear. When I first took it, I literally thought, well, this couldn't be accurate because this person would have zero energy because it has almost zero production of cortisol and has no rhythm to the way the cortisol is being produced in the body. So with all of these different things, I was like, oh, wow, now what do I do? So I took the test and then I had to go figure out some of the answers. I'm going to map some of those out for you today. And then also, I would say this, whether it be me or someone else that you trust and you know that you can help utilize, if you or someone that you know is in this state, they're exhausted all the time, make sure they bring them, drag them, get some help because they probably won't have the initiative to do it themselves because they literally can't conceive the idea of taking on another task. But we've been able to simplify this to some degree and make it relatively easy to get that individual to feel good enough and motivated enough to get to the next level. All right, with that being said, so there's the 3 phases. That first part being just unsettled, unable to literally just sink in, you wouldn't be able to take a nap. You're always picking up your phone. You're always kind of in this stuck on go mode. Then after that, you end up in this wired and tired. You end up going to bed later and later. You're up through the middle of the night. And then the last phase is literally when you wake up and you are still exhausted even after sleeping for 8-9 hours a night. All right, let's talk about some of the causes. Right away, I'll tell you this. Ultimately, it's a version of stress, some version. Now, it could be stress caused by a virus in your body. It could be because of chronic, not so good health, which would often be, and this is one of the reasons I teach those 2 things. So I'm just on the heels of, I just got back from Louisville yesterday. I was in Louisville, Kentucky over the weekend teaching, again, some functional medicine to an amazing group of doctors, men and women in Louisville. So a little shout out to them. Thank you for being so welcoming and friendly. And we had a lot of fun this weekend. We spent 9 hours doing a deep dive into how to recognize and heal up gut health and adrenal dysfunction. So often, and I teach those 2 together because it is very common that by the time, usually at a root cause of a lot of the adrenal fatigues is some other ailment in the body, autoimmune conditions, viruses, things like Epstein-Barr, stealth pathogens, Lyme, all of those. The fatigue part of all of those is usually driving your adrenals down. Now, I'll also say to get those better, all of those different things, you're going to need to address the adrenals, because the adrenals are essentially what protect the human body. Make it short and simple. Your adrenal glands produce something called cortisol. They also make your hormones, like things like they can make testosterone for us. They make DHEA, which is the precursor to testosterone. So they make DHEA, which is the precursor. Testosterone is usually made in other parts. Anyways, our adrenal glands are helping us produce a lot of hormones. Ladies, when you get into your menopause, that's where all your hormones are going to be essentially made. So what happens is, if the adrenals get tired, the first thing that the adrenals will do, if they're starting to produce less cortisol, that's your stress hormone. Your body believes that cortisol is more important, which is a stress hormone, believes it's much more important to have your stress hormones than it is to have your sex hormones. So it starts to create what we call a progesterone steal. It starts to steal your sex hormones so you can produce more stress hormones. So your body believes it's much more important to be able to get up and run from a bear than it is to have intimate relationships. So your body recognizes that it needs more cortisol, and if you start to run low, it is going to steal them from your other hormones. And there is, again, just kind of a peek into where a lot of people have hormonal issues. They say, "Doc, there's something wrong with my hormones." What most are still missing, as they in hormone replacement therapy, can be fantastic, but we still have to get to the root cause of why are your hormones out of balance. So if you show up into the doctor's office and they're testing your progesterone, they're testing your testosterone, but they have not looked at things like DHEA, and they have not looked at things like cortisol production or the rhythm of cortisol, you can be completely missing the root cause of why you have hormone imbalance in the first place. So let's go back a little bit here and just talk about some of the causes: viruses, poor gut health, chronic health issues, autoimmune conditions, blood sugar imbalances, poor blood sugar management. Constantly eating sugar is going to absolutely, over time, make you a very exhausted person. And remember, sugar is a stressor. I'll repeat that. Sugar is a stressor to the system, in the same way that if a bear was chasing you, you'd have the same hormonal response through cortisol. So if you're eating sugar constantly, you are constantly producing cortisol, and cortisol will tell you to essentially store sugar as fat into your body. Cortisol is a fat storing hormone. So by eating sugar, you are stressing out your body. By eating poor foods, by eating the bread, the muffins, the pastas, even if you are trying to manage how much you're doing in calories, putting your body under that stress, and it might not even be a ton of food. Sometimes it is still being stored as a fat molecule. Anyways, all right. So other things, stress. that's the other things. Stress, especially the long chronic ones. It is not uncommon that I will see someone after divorce, and they manage the divorce pretty good, but then after the divorce, the body breaks down. That's very common. If someone's passed, a loved one is now no longer with us, especially if they're fighting an illness for a long period of time and you were by their side. There are some of these stressors that we take on as just normalcies, yet we're waking up every single day. Financial stress might be one of the absolute most crushing components that there is out there. It is what it is, but financial stress will break the average human being because we stress about fundamentals. Remember, way back in our day, our ancestors, their stressors were things like having a roof over their head. So they had to be concerned about shelter and food. When you have financial stress, you're really having stress about the same thing: shelter and food, and the ability to provide for yourself. So all the different stressors, physical, mental, financial, whatever they may be, all of them will have an impact on your adrenal glands. All right, with that being said, let's keep rolling here. So we talked a little bit about the symptoms, a little bit about the causes, a little bit about the different phases. Testing, I'll go back there and kind of repeat this. You can test. It's a very simple at-home test. So, for example, our office, we can mail it to you anywhere in the country if you wanted to. If you have a functional medicine doctor you work with, just ask them. There are different ones out there. They're all going to fundamentally teach us what we need to know. What is your cortisol level? How much of it is being produced, especially first thing in the morning? And that level should be relatively high. Different tests will have it a different score, so I won't mention a number here. But it should be high in the morning and essentially start to taper off during the day. And when that happens, that is rhythm. So we want how much and what is the rhythm of that cortisol. If we see that it's low production, then we have to address this with some very specific herbs and vitamins to help nurture, rehabilitate the adrenal gland so it can produce more cortisol. We need to feed the gland properly, and we need to essentially nurture it, repair it properly. If we see the rhythm off, then we also have to support not only that, but we probably have to support something called your hypothalamus gland and how your body is responding to stress now. So sometimes we develop what's called a negative feedback system, negative feedback loop. And really what that means to you is that you've had the stressor for so long, your body stops responding in a particular manner. It's almost like, this is my analogy. Anyone that has a 2-year-old out there will understand this. I'll give this example this past weekend in my seminar. Say you're a 2-year-old, you have a 2-year-old and your mom. When that little girl first says, "Mommy, mommy," you pay attention. You're like, "Yes, dear, yes, dear. What can I do for you?" Then eventually, that little 2-year-old all day long goes, "Mommy, mommy, 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 mommy." And you don't listen and you don't respond. That's a negative feedback. That means the system, you're getting input, you're just not responding. And that happens in our bodies. When the alarm system has gone off for so long, it stops alarming the system. It doesn't feel like an alarm anymore. So oftentimes we are just getting used to our stressors. And that is no doubt a big problem and very, very common problem. Most of the time when I'm interviewing, that's what I like to think of it as, an interview with my patients. And I'm trying to understand who they are, their history, their current lifestyle, how their brain is working, what's going on in between those ears there. What I'm listening for is, have they normalized a massive level of stress and act like no big deal? This is just what I do. Now, we can develop capacities, and that's why I'm here today. I've developed a much better capacity in my life because of all the different things you've heard me talk about in these podcasts, of eating better, moving better, thinking better, exercising, putting our bodies under a little bit of stress, intentionally trying to level up, intentionally doing things that I'm unfamiliar with, intentionally doing things that are inconvenient, intentionally doing things that are uncomfortable. By doing that, we can increase our capacity so we can handle more stressors. So let's talk about some of the vitamins and herbs and we'll wrap this up. So there's some amazing vitamins and herbs, and this can be very, very simple. There's something called, there's an herb, a vitamin, we'll call it. It's really a desiccated vitamin. It's called Adrenal desiccated. I'll make sure it's in the show notes. This one will have the fastest acting potential to get you back in the game. If you are fatigued and I need to be able to help a patient quickly, it's not a drug. We're going to feed the gland, essentially a desiccated glandular material. We're going to give the gland something that it can utilize to start to function better. And this becomes really important. This won't fix everything, but this becomes really important so the individual with adrenal fatigue at least starts to see the light at the end of the tunnel here. So I use 3 things here. I could use some more, no doubt, but for this podcast purposes, I want to give you something that's very simple that you can take away with, that you can start utilizing in your own lives if you're having some of these challenges. The first would be adrenal desiccated. If you are in that scenario where you know you're in phase 2, phase 3, you're wired and tired, or you're in that phase where you know that you're a walking zombie. Adrenal desiccated, fantastic. The next one is called Drenamine. And again, I'll put this in the show notes. This is the one, this is an important one. This is what is going to feed the adrenal gland back. This is almost like utilizing a very specific multivitamin designed for your adrenal gland. It's a very, very brilliant product. In fact, just give you a sense, it has a little bit of what's called B2 in it. And B2 is, of the B vitamins, it is the one that helps vasodilation versus vasoconstriction. Because under stress we vasoconstrict, we want to have things that are going to help increase blood flow in an easy fashion, helping our muscles unwind, helping our cardiovascular system unwind. So Drenamine, adrenal desiccated, and then let me talk about the herbs that we use. There's 4 different herbs, and I know that sounds like a lot, but the good news is you can get them all in one tonic. So let me explain each one and how they all play a very significant role, and I really wouldn't skip either one of these. The first one is echinacea. Echinacea is hands down probably the single best modulator for your immune system, especially modulation of white blood cells. And what does that really mean? If an herb is a modulator, it means that it helps things from going too high or too low. And when it comes to adrenal fatigue, inevitably your immune system is now vulnerable. So it has echinacea in there. I could talk about echinacea for hours. Yet let's just kind of keep for this purpose of this podcast, and recognize that it's supportive of your immune system. So you always have something going to work for you. Second thing we're going to talk about is an herb called ashwagandha. Many of you have heard of this herb. This is one of my go-to herbs when it comes to any type of adrenal dysfunction for a couple reasons. One, if you are having higher levels of cortisol in the morning, especially in that phase 1 period where you're just wired up and you're full of cortisol all day long, this is an adaptogen herb that will help regulate your cortisol levels, which is so important so we don't burn them out, so we don't have too much cortisol, so we're not gaining all this extra weight around our hips because we have too much cortisol production. I like to think of ashwagandha as kind of like it's almost like Disneyland in a bottle because it's so effective on just helping a little bit of everything. So echinacea, ashwagandha. The next one is rumania. Not too many people know about rumania, but I will tell you when it comes to helping support and improving the overall function of your adrenal glands, rumania may be one of the most important herbs that we can use. It helps you restore dysfunctional and damaged adrenal glands. So in the big picture, this is one of the bigger ones doing a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes. So that's called rumania. And then last but not least is licorice root. Many people hear about licorice root, and especially for its amazing effect just for women as just an overall tonic. But the reason that is so important when it comes to adrenal dysfunction and adrenal fatigue is because licorice root will help limit and reduce the amount of cortisol damage that's done. So it'll help create more stable cortisol hormones. What does that mean to you? It means that you won't have to produce as much, and the gland will not get overworked as much, and you won't have as much circulating in your body, so you won't have as much weight gain during this phase. So those 4, here's the beauty. I know that sounded like a lot because I'm already saying that the other 2 vitamins, the other 2, adrenal desiccated and adrenaline, are probably going to need to be in your protocol. And then these 4 herbs. The beauty is this all comes in one tonic. It's liquid. I'm not going to tell you that it tastes awesome, but who gives a hoot? Honestly, it does the work. In fact, it does the work so great. It is something I use every single day. And over time, people may say, well, do you have adrenal dysfunction every day? No, but I will tell you what I do. I push myself to the limit, and I'm not going to stop. I push myself physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of these things. I push. And now that I know how to support my body to manage and to manage stress, to help my body have more capacity to be able to handle and literally do more things in my life, one of my secrets there, hands down, is utilizing the herbs that support my adrenal glands to be super, super strong. All right. So that being said, I'll make sure that all of that is in your show notes. Once again, thank you for being here. Continue to do your thing. Keep sharing these out. Keep spreading the word. Keep doing it. Keep sharing out. Keep spreading love. And remember, for anybody out there that is a little bit tired, and not just because they didn't sleep good last night, but they're starting to become fatigued, I will tell you a couple. Remember, keep in mind the signs and symptoms I just said there. They may start to have an outlook in life that isn't that awesome. They might have a little bit of stinking thinking. They may have a little bit of negative thoughts going on. They might be a little less likelihood to be jovial about going out and doing things or saying yes to spending time with friends or taking the trip. They might see these things as all as inconveniences, and things that are difficult to do. But supporting the adrenal glands will often make the change in these things and bring us back into a best version of ourselves. So keep doing your thing, keep sharing out, keep spreading love. Appreciate that you are here, and I will see you in the next episode of the Health Made Simple Show.